I'm Amanda, and this is Not Your Granny's Quilt Show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode. I'm so glad you're here to hear this conversation with Taiga Bentley. I'm sure you know her from her Instagram, House of Taiga, where she shares and showcases her epic color gradient quilts and quilt coats. She is an art curator by day and a color gradient enthusiast 100% of the time. Taiga's love of color and expressiveness and art come through in her work, and it is just so great to see. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. We really dig into just everything, and I hope you love it as much as I have loved talking to Taiga. So let's get into it. You guys, this is your last chance. At the end of October, I am retiring some of the merch in the merchandise shop over at nygqs.printify.me. There's sweatshirts, there's stickers, there's mugs, there's tote bags, there's t-shirts. Some of those designs are going to get retired, and I would really love to see some of it get bought up before they go to sleep. So head over to the merch shop, that's nygqs.printify.me, to go check out the merch for the show. And now back to the episode. Hi, Taiga. How are you?
Hi, Amanda. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being here today. I've been looking forward to this. I'm so excited that you're here on the show.
I'm so honored. I really squealed when I saw your message. I love this podcast, and I was very, very excited to be invited.
I'm so flattered.
Yay.
I know it's so exciting. And it's just like those people that I kind of like lurk and I'm like, should I ask? I don't know. They're gonna just think that's all I care about is that them being on the podcast or whatever I tell myself in my brain. So whenever people say yes, I'm like, really?
No, no one ever says no. I'm certain of it. They must love it.
Or they just ghost me. It's fine. It's fine. It's totally fine. Like I get it. It's like Instagram's a weird place, but it's fine. But I'm so happy you said yes, and I'm glad you're here. And so, I mean, you're so well known for your quilt coats and your epic color gradients. Um, but before we talk about all of that beautifulness, I just want to know how you even got into the quilting world in the first place.
It's kind of an embarrassing story. I've always been very drawn to making in some capacity, probably as like a stress outlet. There was a period of time where all I did was decorate party hats with like feathers and wrapping paper and Twizzlers and all kinds of stuff. And but like I mean like 50. Like it got to the point where what do you I had like special shelves for them because I didn't know what to do, or like we'd go out for dinner with our friends and everyone at the table in a restaurant would be wearing a hilarious enormous party hat like it. And then that's kind of died because I was like, this is not practical, and it segued into making pom-poms. And all I did for like months and months was make pom-poms. To this day I have buckets of yarn that are left over from my pom-pom obsession. And when I got married to my husband, well, obviously, I mean, versus to my ex-husband, okay, when I got married this time, our name cards were resting on pom poms in like gradient rainbows down these long tables.
Oh
And
my
we had these
gosh.
huge suspended Japanese lanterns from the ceiling, and it ended in a pom pom fight, and it was hilarious. And then you really need to stop making pom poms because what do you do with those after 1,000? And then it was COVID, and I dug up my own childhood dollhouse that had been like rotting in the basement of my art gallery down the block, and spent a huge chunk of COVID redoing and renovating this dollhouse
Oh my
because
gosh.
we just found out that we were pregnant with our first daughter. And that was super exciting. And I obsessed over that and spent all my time on eBay sourcing tiny furniture and little wallpapers and doing that whole thing, and then realized at like 8 months pregnant that it's super impractical to have a dollhouse full of chokeable things in your house when you bring home a baby. So went right back into the basement, and I got one last chance to visit a girlfriend out of town before I had the baby, and she was working on a quilt. And we were just sitting there watching TV, and I was looking over at her, and this quilt had a rainbow binding, like
Mm,
a patchwork rainbow binding.
mhm.
And I have always loved color and always loved gradients. And like even my engagement ring is a gradient of sapphires. Like I am
Oh.
it lives in my brain as like the happiest I will ever be. And I was looking at this thing thinking like, I never really considered quilting before. Like, ooh, fabrics, like what's going on there? And kind of like pulled up Instagram while she's sewing
Mhm,
and discovered the world of modern quilting
mhm.
and modern fabrics and Heather Ross and Ruby Star Society and art gallery fabrics. And my mind is opening up to all these things as I'm looking at her. And I go like, uh-oh. And while we were sitting there, I ordered a sewing machine just like on Amazon, like a
Yeah.
casual, like a Sayer heavy duty to be delivered to my house. And then the fabric buying began. And and it was originally it was like one quilt. I discovered Lo and Behold Stitchery
Mhm.
back when she was still working in the hospital. Like I think she was a nurse for a long time before she started doing it, and she had just put out the ombre puff quilt tutorial.
Mhm.
And it was, I mean, my God, it was everything I ever wanted. And I thought, like, this is great. I'm going to do one. I'm just going to do one quilt. That's cool. I'm going to do a rainbow puff quilt. I had it in my mind, and I finished it. And I was like, great, that's done. Great hobby finished. Like, what else am I going to do now? And then suddenly the obsession took hold.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it was like, well, now I have to do a smaller rainbow one for my kid. And I
Mhm.
have to do a larger rainbow one for my nephew. And I have to actually, it was maybe even cooler than that. I had finished the puff quilt and I had it out on the couch. And our nephew came over to play.
Mhm.
And he was maybe 2 or 3 at the time. And all he did was sit on this puff quilt. And he was just like at the phase of learning colors, learning words, and spent over an hour playing I Spy on this quilt.
Yeah.
And it was like a light bulb went off in my brain. And so I did a little one, a little rainbow one for our daughter when she was born. And I don't know how much you know about tummy time
Mhm.
for kids. Bane of my existence. I hate saying no to my children. I'm very bad at it. And they hated tummy time. It was like going to the gym for babies.
Mhm.
And when this quilt was finished, we would put her down on it, and all of a sudden it was like silent.
Mm.
And for months, we would have coffee on this quilt, we would have our snacks on this quilt, and she would just lie face down on this thing, looking at all the colors and patterns, and then being able to recognize animals. And like it still lives in our car. And on long road trips, we'll play I Spy with it because now she's 4 and has a full vocabulary. And it was incredible. Like it just one thing rolled into the next and into the next. And suddenly, like friends of my parents who had seen my daughter with this thing said like, oh, I have someone being born, can I order one from you? And from baby quilts it was suddenly like, actually I have a queen size, I'd like it on my bed, I want it on my couch, can you do a king size? And then again, like just the, well, yeah, no, that's how it got started. That's really how it got rolling. I mean, that was the first year of it. It was a boulder down a hill. Like I couldn't stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. How fun though. Like, I mean, it's so funny the like serial crafter to quilting timeline is like it's different for everybody, but it's there. Like it's like, oh, I used to crochet and then I did this, or it's like I've always been crafty. Like there's just something about it, I think, that just draws people in because I think you hit a wall, you're like, what am I even making this for? Like I can
Yes,
only make so many washcloths with crochet. I can only make so many scarves and hats and you know at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't even have time to wear all these. Like, who am I kidding right now? Or like people want specific things, but I'm like, that'll be $80. And they're like, never mind. I'm like,
exactly.
it's not free, my friend. Like, if I gift people, that's different. But like, yeah, it's hard because you're just like, what do I do with all this stuff now? But I feel like quilts are so much more on the practical end of things. Like, because everybody always needs a blanket at some point, right? Like,
Yeah.
preparing for the worst case scenario, but also be beautiful at the same time. So I I love it. And yeah, like fabric is what got me into it too. I'm like, I've always been around fabric because my mom has always like sewn and been crafty and all that stuff. But like when I started seeing modern stuff like Amy Butler design before she moved on from fabrics and like um Tula Pink, as soon as I saw that, I was just like, okay, well, in that case, I guess I'm going to start quilting because I need to touch all these things and use them. So I feel you. It sucks you in.
It absolutely does. And I mean, just certainly no sewing, no craftiness in my family. Like I
Mm,
did not come from that kind of upbringing, but I came around to it through a different avenue, which is the art world.
mhm.
My grandmother, as I was growing up, owned and ran a contemporary art gallery in
Okay.
Toronto, where I live. And my mom worked there, and that's where I grew up. And so I was around artists, painters, photographers, sculptors my whole life
Yeah.
and went to school for it. And I've worked in the art gallery for 15 years and recently this past year took it over. So I know how you feel with
Yeah.
taking on a family business.
Yeah.
But for me, I have, I've got my 10,000 hours not in sewing, but in looking at and talking about art. And so
Mm,
for me, seeing all of these designs in fabric, I'm going like, this is
yeah.
we're just working on a different type of canvas. Like all of my fabric buying, I think of it the same way. I'm walking through museums and go like, that's great. That's great. Add to cart, like just bring it on. These
Yeah.
are really, really talented people using color in an amazing way and really cultivating not just like a contemporary sense of light and line and texture and pattern, but like this is the next level of illustration that I
Mhm.
think is pretty spectacular. And you see that in Ray Ritchie, who does these amazing pattern fabrics, but also illustrates books and does posters and art and calendars and all kinds of stuff. That's really, really cool.
Mhm.
Um, so that's, I mean, it certainly is. It combines all of my great loves of like looking at beautiful things, making rainbows, and online shopping.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, it's all my hobbies in one. It's fantastic. Just marry it all together. And I think
Exactly.
that's what's so fun about the world of fabric is it's so artful and a lot of, the stuff that draws me in is the stuff that looks like a painting or you can tell it's like, someone's doodles. Like I think that's why I love Ruby Star so much because it just has that feel of like, oh, this is someone's art.
Yeah, it every single creator on their
Mhm.
platform has a very specific signature look.
Yeah.
They're really telling a narrative through
Hmm.
their collections. And I love that Ruby Star will celebrate the backstory to why these creators came out with these patterns.
Yeah.
Um, because you can connect to those things the same way that you could connect to a piece of art in a store, in a gallery, like it's
Yeah.
the story is what brings it up for you and up talking about their childhoods and their families and these sort of visceral memories that attach themselves to the patterns. I think it's really is so beautiful and so new and so fresh.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. It's that artist statement that lets you connect with it on a different level, not just visually, but with the backstory and find common ground in there and go, oh, then it speaks to you on a whole different level. And it's so much more meaningful in that way from, because you can find a different way to connect with it instead of just liking the colors, which there's nothing wrong with that. You can just like something because you like it. You don't have to have a real deeper reason, but for someone like me who loves the meaning behind things, who loves to know why something was made the way it was made or what the inspiration was. Um, like that really feeds me in that way. And
Very well
now,
said. Yeah, very
so
well.
thanks. um, so how, yeah, I guess how has it been like bouncing between the gallery world and the creating custom commissions for people? Like how has that?
It's interesting. I think there's a problem with boundaries and with blurring lines, and simply also with just like the time in the day. There aren't enough hours in the day for everything that I want to do. Especially with things really moving ahead in my gallery in the art world and needing to be seen as a serious professional there, but
Yeah.
then also, like we have two little kids now,
Yeah.
1.5 and almost 4. And so like being a mom has taken over so much of my mental space. And I think that quilting really grounded me, especially during my mat leaves and during, it is my calm time.
Mhm.
Um, but it has also become this sort of unexpected small business on its own. And so, my day is like 10 to 5 at the gallery, and then 5 to 8 with my children, and then 8 to midnight quilting. And then you get up and you start it all over again. Um, and I love when they intersect. I
Mhm.
think that my quilting practice makes me a better art dealer. I'm practicing my looking and I'm practicing my curating and
Mhm.
my fastidiousness, and all of those things sort of attach themselves to one another. And like I'll make coats for arts events and then be able to wear them and just feel a little bit more confident and more myself, being such an introvert in a very social field. I get like pretty shy and pretty nervous on the inside, and that's not the person I need to be in that space. So,
Right.
it's body armor in a
Mhm.
way. It's sort of like bumps you up.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that everyone in these positions goes, it's about balance. It's always about balance, and learning to maintain that balance. And sometimes you slip and sometimes you walk the line fine. And like, fortunately, I have a very supportive family. My baby sister lives with us, and she's
Oh,
our nanny for the girls. Um, and so having her around, like she's my model for all of my coats because she's such a great hanger. She's like tall and slender and has great shoulders and a great jawline, and it's great. And I boss her around. And my husband is also an art dealer, so
okay.
he really understands the ebbs and flows of our world and the stressors. And he's also a very creative and very visual person. So like it's so nice to have someone to bounce ideas off of. And yeah, he helped very much to curate this background in my studio right now.
Yeah. That looks great. Yeah, that's so fun, and to have, family surround you like that. I think when you're a small business owner and an entrepreneur, like, it can be really lonely. And even when you've got a good team or you've got good people in place and a support system, it's still kinda lonely and, like, do you find that when you're kind of in your pursuit of what you're doing or what your vision for, curating new pieces or creating new bundles of fabrics?
I think that the imposter syndrome sets in when I'm alone in my space. Um, I I have a lot of self-doubt, a lot of, sort of self-conscious, like this really is my eh, in the gallery world, like I was raised in it and trained in it, and I had mentors, and so I have a certain faith in my capacity in what I'm doing there. And I'm also representing other artists and
Mhm,
their work. And so all I have to do is know how to talk about it and feel that it's important and valuable. But in this space, being the artist, very nerve wracking, like really, really nerve wracking. Um, and and I think that there's a lot of wanting to sort of reach out into the void, especially using something like Instagram and polling people and saying like what do you think, this or this? Like I don't know. I am at a crossroads. And um and usually the response that I get echoed back to me is what my intuition was sort of quietly saying in the first place. And
mhm,
that makes you feel better. It kind of reinforces that you're on the right path, and
mhm,
you just need to trust your aesthetic choices in doing these things. And um I think that uh I mean, I'll be completely honest, sometimes I would love to be lonely.
mm.
this is the needing a little bit of alone time to recharge my batteries, just being an introvert the way that I am. Um, and then like running a business where I have to speak to everyone, and then being that head of a household of small, loud creatures. Uh, Sometimes just being quietly alone in my space is very, very valuable
Mm,
to my mental health, even if it doesn't necessarily help my decision making in the practice.
yeah.
It's just it is my safe and sacred zone, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it is chaos when you've got kids, and it just is. And I don't have my own, but I've got two stepsons and have been around for a long time, you know. We've been with their dad for 16 years, and so I've seen it all. And um they're, you know, out and gone now, which is great, being young men and living their lives. But yeah, that feeling of just like, is there ever going to be a quiet moment is really interesting, because it's like, then you miss it. Then it's like they're gone one day and you're like, oh my God, what happened? But yeah, I think taking time out to recharge and like not, like you said, reach out into the void for some inspiration of like, instead of learning to trust ourselves, we're trying to trust everybody else. And it's like, but they don't know your inner workings either. And like, I think for me, I have had to practice learning to trust myself very heavily, especially when I'm making commissions for other people, when they're like, just, I love your aesthetic, just do whatever. And I'm like, I'm
Ooh,
sorry,
that's really
what?
rough.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
really
like, I can't, what? I'm stressed. So I get that, but yeah, it's interesting to like try to find that quiet time and alone time. And I think even sometimes when you're working on stuff for other people, that's almost not like, even if you're by yourself and it's quiet, it's like, to me that doesn't feel like my like recharge time either, because there's no relaxation in that for me, because it's like now I have to focus on what I'm doing and I have to make sure it's perfect. And like there's all these other factors that go into working on things for other people that like don't allow me to relax the way I would if I was just like messing around with stuff for myself, or like just trying things just to try them. And so I don't know how, like, is the coat making or the bundle making, is does that double as like feeling relaxing to you, you know, your quiet alone time, or do you have to try to like cut that up and find some different activities to do?
think there's a difference in the commissions that you take on versus the commissions I take on, in
Hmm.
that my creativity is actually weirdly restricted. It's not, I think that there's probably a lot more freedom in what you're making that would lead to a lot more openness and uncertainty and anxiety.
Hmm.
Whereas gradients, they are what they are. Like it's just a different type of math. I don't actually have any um like influence over them. If you put a purple and a pink and a blue, there is an order that they need to go in order to make sense. And so, in a way, that's kind of out of my hands. And I'm just building this puzzle based on whether or not someone said, I would like a white to black gradient or a full rainbow gradient or a blue to yellow gradient. The maths for
Hmm.
me. And so in many ways, I just need to sort of let my eyes and my hands do the job. And my
Hmm.
brain is off somewhere else, probably watching bad TV or listening to an audiobook. Like it's the works speaks its own language. And the only thing that that really takes my a lot of time for me mentally is that part of what I think makes the commission special, other than just me loving rainbows, is that for every commission I take on, a huge part of that process is getting to know the person that it's going to.
Hmm.
And so that's, like what their family is like, what their hobbies are like, what places they've traveled to, what food they love. And such a great thing about fabric right now is that you can find all of those things in fabrics. And
Mhm.
so I'm really trying to hunt down specific fabrics that reference that person's life, so that when this quilt goes to this baby or on this bed or on their couch, as they're sort of looking down and living with it, the same way you would live with an art collection, they're
Mhm.
going like, hey, that's me.
Mhm.
That's so like I had a client buy a king size quilt for their parents,
Mm.
and it was like they met in May. So I had a Ruby Star Society calendar with May in it, and they had three girls. And so I found like a family of little mice with three little daughters, and she had a hot chocolate factory. So that was in there. And the dad plays golf and tennis and baseball. And so those were in there. And they had a certain kind of car. And like even my secret weapon is spoonflower,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
spoonflower is incredible. But my favorite thing is that you can buy samples, which is just like an 8-inch square for not a lot of money. And you can have any fabric printed on an 8-inch square. So they had daughters that lived like in New York, in the country gardening, and in Venice.
Mhm.
Well, how special to be able to just custom order a little square of fabric with the Venice Canal.
Yeah.
I can go in there and suddenly they see all of their children off. So it's so nice to be able to incorporate those customized things to each person. And even though a rainbow is always a rainbow is always a rainbow,
Sure.
every single quilt that I've ever done is different because it caters to the people that it's going to, with little parts of their life in it. And I love that. I love that the fabric world allows me to do that. I think that
Mhm.
it makes it really, like, it just warms my heart knowing that I've had messages back from people as they discover things months later.
Yeah.
And it'll be like little stories that they told me where suddenly, like, 6 months in, they'll go like, oh my God, I just found like the frog from the story I told you, or, something like that. And I mean, that makes it all really, really worthwhile. But it also takes the guesswork out of it for me,
Mhm.
because in that case it's just a treasure hunt, and it's a treasure hunt for them when they've got it, but it's also a treasure hunt for me with my little list as I go through and hunt down and find all of these fabrics to incorporate. And then once I have them, like, color does what it does, and
Yeah.
I just need to like be patient and use sun and use night and take the time and move my little puzzle pieces around until it's finished
Yeah.
you know
Well, yeah. I but that sounds so fun. Like, just so fun. And I love seeing what you've created because it does feel everything always feels cohesive and everything always feels like very specifically chosen. So, and I think you're right. I think there's, when you're curating fabrics or pulling colors, it's like things either go or they don't go. They either work together or they don't work together. And I think, yeah, in that case, you can let the fabric speak for itself, which is nice. And like, you know, and it's then it kind of gets easier because then you can tell people like that's not going to work. And let me tell you why.
yeah.
And it's it's an interesting game to play with people, I think, to convince them that they're wrong. Not all the time, but in the times where you have to, it's kind of like, how do I say this nicely? I can't say that's really fucking ugly. Um, but how can I say, oh, I'm not sure that that's going to lend well to the overall like visual impact of the quilt, or it's like, how do I professionally say, don't do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, I think it's a thing that I deal with pretty often in the gallery.
Mhm.
They'll show me the room they're working with, and then the work they're collecting, and like, yeah, actually, in many ways, in that sphere, it's the opposite. Like, I would not encourage someone to buy a painting just because it matches their couch.
Mhm.
I would encourage them to buy a painting that makes them feel something.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of ugly paintings out there. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ugly quilts. There's a lot of ugly fabric. No
there's
offense
a
to
lot of ugly
anybody.
fabric. There's a lot of very ugly fabric.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And,
Oh,
I'm sure it resonates with some people, but and I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum. It's just, when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I think if you don't know at least the basics of some art principles, like it's hard to be a designer because, you might have a vision in your head or you might think something works, but if you're ignoring very basic like elements that is required for things to look good, just science, um, you're never going to come up with something that looks nice. So
yeah.
it's hard because I think the accessibility that we have, like you were talking about Spoonflower, you can upload your own designs and you can sell your designs on Fabric, and that's really, really cool. But not everybody should. Ugh, yeah,
No, not everyone should. Not everyone should be an artist. I mean, like I am not an artist. I cannot draw or paint to save my life. I can't wield a pastel. If I'm drawing with my own children with crayons, I will stick to like stars and hearts. I'm not an artist myself, but I do really appreciate great artistry and great use of pattern and color and great understanding of color theory
yeah,
and I really try to like as soon as I find those fabrics where those artists are just excelling, I mean I gobble them all up for sure.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. That's a
Yeah.
fun.
A lot.
That's yeah. You're like,
Yeah,
just give it all to me. It's fine. Are
yeah,
there
yeah, exactly.
are there like projects or gradients that like I guess not gradients per se, but like projects that you've regretted like selling off to the person who ordered it, or is there anything that has kind of made you have to like change your process in a way because it wasn't working, or has it always just felt like really natural and easy to put together?
No, I've struggled. I've struggled. I mean, I have my comfort zones
Hmm.
and like obviously full rainbow is a very comfortable zone for me. A yellow, green, blue, I struggle with a lot. I have like yellow, I really struggle with yellow in general. I'm not a particular fan of that color. I
Yeah.
don't have it anywhere in my house. And, whenever I get into these sort of like, I mean, it's a stupid thing to say because it's very gendered, but boy quilts, where the prompt I'm being given is to keep it in the boy zone, which is very like blue, gray, black, green, and
Hmm.
a little bit of yellow or a little bit of red. And I go like, but I can't get to red without purple, friends. Like who said that purple couldn't be a boy? But it's like it becomes very like blocky and I have to take a lot of time.
Mm.
Like I would say that it takes me maybe 3 times as long to work out a gradient in those tones than if I was given any other color on the wheel. Um, and I think that uh, a lot of times with commissions, I try to be really specific in my questioning because
Hmm.
I can make anything work as long as I know for sure what you're talking about. And it's when people get very specific where they like only want like a Crayola purple, like a
Mm.
really purpley, like a Barney the dinosaur purple
Yeah.
purple,
Yeah.
that I go like, okay, but if you would like a solid color quilt, I am possibly not your person.
Hmm.
Like it has to push out. Otherwise, why me? Don't pay my prices. Like, please, like by all means, go somewhere where they're going to just give you the tones that you want.
Right.
And usually at that point they'll say, like, no, what you get. No, I trust you and your style. Whether or not that's actually the case once they receive it, who's to say? Everyone's
Right.
been polite. The only challenge I really had, which was the only time I've ever used a long armor, was I had someone order one of my quilts, but they wanted it on Minky.
Mm.
I do not F with Minky. I cannot wrap my brain around it. I don't understand it. It's beyond me. It's beyond my capability. So I sent it out and it came back beautiful. It was so lovely. But of course, like all of my quilts are done with straight line quilting on my walking foot
Hmm.
because it's not actually about the quilting, it's about the fabric. So I
Yeah.
do like the most minimal lines possible. And the client was like, well, can't I have that? And I was like, no, you may not. Like, I can give you a different backing with my quilting,
Hmm.
or you can have Minky and it's going to have a doodle. And like, that's what's going on. And in the end, she loved it. She was very happy. And I was very happy because it was off of my table.
You're like, get it out of here.
Please, I can't anymore. I think there's even like pieces of like Minky fluff left around from when I had this thing come in. I'm going like, I don't know what to do with this. And that's
Yeah.
it. Out of
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah. You will find minky fluff for the rest of your life, just so you know. It's as a
Yeah.
person who frequently works with it, I've just come to accept that it's a part of me now. So it's probably in my lungs. I don't know.
Quilter's lung.
Yeah. Like it's all the fluff and the minky and the lint and yeah, no. I get that with minky though. Like if I have to piece it for a backing, I would rather die, honestly. And so I always try to like if people want minky, I'm like, okay, your quilt cannot be larger than, like 80 by 90, or it can be 80 inches wide and it can be as long as you want it, but it can only be 80 inches wide because 90 inches is the biggest they make it, and that's it. Like I need that extra width for loading it on the machine so you get 80-inch quilt top. That's it.
Fair enough. Very reasonable requirement, I think,
Yeah.
personally.
And it's
Yeah.
heavy, so it's like the bigger your quilt, the heavier it's going to be. It's
It's
about
really heavy.
Yeah, it's like about a pound per yard is the information I've gathered from Shannon Fabrics themselves. So
Weighted
it's
blanket.
yeah, honestly. I pile them on me like because I love minky, so I put it on almost every quilt. And especially in the winter, I end up piling multiple minky backed quilts on me to sleep. And
Oh my gosh.
it's heaven.
Heaven?
Yeah,
Heaven is like sleeping in a forest surrounded by little foxes and
yeah,
squirrels, and you just have a happy little princess life.
yeah. 100%.
I
100%.
love that.
Are you fed up with your sheets just not feeling as luxurious as you want while also being durable? Well, look no further. I'm partnering with Cozy Earth and they make the sheets of your dreams. I have been sleeping on my bamboo sheet set all summer, and I have to tell you, I am never going back. The bamboo sheets are made with 100% premium viscose from bamboo, and they are so breathable, you'll sleep a few degrees cooler. And who doesn't want less sweaty nights? The fabric also has an enhanced weave that won't pill wash after wash, and they're guaranteed for 10 years. All that, and they are so soft and sleek, you'll feel like you're at a high-end luxury hotel. And now you can elevate your own space by going to cozyearth.com and using code GRANNIES for an exclusive discount for up to 40% off your purchase. And if you receive a post-purchase survey, be sure to say that you heard about Cozy Earth from this podcast, and they'll send you a free pair of socks. So if you're ready to upgrade your nights and transform your days, head to cozyearth.com and don't forget to use code GRANNIES, that's GRANNYS, for up to 40% off your purchase. Yeah, but yeah, for anything else, it's putting it through the sewing machine is not fun. So I understand your send it away because
No, no,
it's
I
rough.
just can't. It breaks my brain. I
Yeah,
can't figure it out. Not for the life
it's
of me.
too slippery for life, but
But I mean,
that's
it
okay.
turned out well in the end.
Yeah, 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 it
Whew.
always does. I think people are worried. They're always worried about it. Do I need batting? I'm like, yes, you need batting. It's gonna be fine. Just pin the shit out of it and it'll be fine. It's like, on the long arm, it doesn't matter because you're attaching it to the canvases and it holds it in place for you. So you don't have to mess with it. So anyway, um, well, and I love that you are like, you stick to what you know, and not in the sense that like you're not willing to branch out, but like I think when people niche in and find their path and what like continues to speak to you so that you can in turn share that with your your fans, your followers, with your clients, like it's what you make has your voice. And I think if people try to do too many things, or if they, try to branch out in too many directions, I think it can harm your business, and in the business sense of like, what are you doing here? People need to get a feel for what you're doing, what you're offering them. And I think you've done that very well. It's very obvious. It's like your post pops up. I'm like, that's Taiga. Like it's unmistakable, which is fantastic. Like that's what you need in this kind of noisy world of everybody's got a business on Instagram kind of thing. And especially in the quilty world, like if people are making, a new pattern releases. And so there's lots of that pattern popping up. And it's like, if people aren't making it their own, or, it just everything kind of starts to look the same. And so when someone uses their voice well in their work, it's like so refreshing to see, because it's like, oh, I know this feels familiar. I can tell it's this person's work. And that's where you find your people too, I think, like your clientele and your following of people who your work speaks to. And I just wonder, like, has that been something, like, has feedback shifted things that you do, or have you, pretty much had a smooth ride in that sense of like people just love it and they're on board, or yeah.
I think that I mean, like, that was a very kind thing to say, and thank you so much. It's so meaningful. But also this part, the gradient, the rainbow gradient part, is what I have to do because I am obsessed with it.
Mm,
And like I I have always organized color.
mhm,
Even before crafting, like even as a child, I was given like a box of crayons, and I preferred to order the crayons in a rainbow gradient than to color with them. With markers, with puzzle pieces at school, with like ocean glass that I would find on the beach. Like
mhm,
we'd find a bunch, and then I would just sit back and play and order them into gradients on my cot. Like I have always, and I'm the oldest of four, and my younger brother will joke about it with me all the time, because when I was, 9 and he was 5, he came out in the morning to see me like in a circle of markers on the floor, placing where each one needed to go, just like happily, quietly. And I looked up at him and said, I live to organize color. And he never let me forget it. He said it in the speech at my wedding. I mean, it's like that's just, I'm associated with that in my family, horrifyingly, but also undeniably.
mhm,
And I think that for me, placing things into gradients actually soothes. It's like a self-soothing thing. I find
mm,
it so peaceful. I find the act of the puzzle to be such like it releases all the happy chemicals in my brain.
mhm.
There's a phone game called I Love Hue, and that's
Okay.
literally all it is. It's just my quilt on the phone. Not me personally. It's done by someone else. But like you get a scrambled screen of color,
Uh-huh.
and you move the squares to create a gradient.
Oh.
And it gets harder and harder and harder and harder until you're suddenly doing like a 500 square puzzle and all of them are pink.
Oh my gosh.
And I have done like, when I say I've done like all of them, I mean, there are like 700 levels, and I have done all of the levels.
Oh my
I
gosh.
I love organizing color. And so I start to sound a little bit psychotic, but the thing is that like this has to be my practice,
Mhm,
because the only reason I'm doing this is because it makes me happy. Like I don't actually particularly like quilting. I just love creating these things.
mhm,
And so, I think that that realistically, part of the response to my work is actually that my work is not hard. You
mhm,
don't need to be technically skilled to do what I do. You just have to have a very large selection of fabric and patience. And so the response I was getting right from the beginning was really positive
Mhm.
because I think the beginner quilters understood that like they too could do just a patchwork quilt with squares.
Mhm.
And I started to get tagged in other people doing what I do. And at first it made me feel very insecure
Mm.
that um that what I was doing was going to get like dumb and annoying and
Oh.
people would get tired of seeing it and they're gonna figure out that like actually I'm just this imposter who likes rainbows and then and they're gonna like not, I don't know, it was a very weird headspace. And then I realized I'm talking like all of this happened in the span of an afternoon. Like this did not take me time to work through, but
Sure.
I realized that it was so nice. It felt so good to inspire other quilters to practice something, to
Mhm.
practice a skill, the same way that I played 1,000 levels of I Love Hue on my phone. And that didn't make what I do any less special. It makes it better because sharing with the community is the best thing that we can possibly do. And I don't own rainbows. And that's, what whenever anyone asked for help with something and I would help them and say, oh, is this okay that I'm asking? My answer was always like, I do not own the gradient. Like you pull up any color field on the computer and it's going to tell you exactly what I do already. It's just a matter of patience and time and endurance. And the thing is that there really are two types of people who follow me. There are the quilters
Mhm.
who will buy the fabric packs and want to try it because why should they have to spend time collecting thousands of fabrics when I've already done it and I'm willing to share?
Yeah.
And then there are the non-quilting people who like looking at rainbows and like wearing gradient coats and want to have these things but aren't going to make them themselves.
Yeah.
So that's really where my like business divides, is that like I want to do the tutorials and the fabric packs for the people like me in my community who just want to create, and
Mhm.
I want to make the custom quilts and the custom coats for the people who are never going to make them themselves in their entire life but like are super happy to pay someone else to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Which is like great because that's how
Love
we have a
that.
business. That's how we have a business, right? Because people want what we can make for them and are willing if they're willing to pay for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like really this is all I can do. Like this is, if someone came to me and they were like, I would love one of your coats but make it all white, I'm going to say like this is the pattern I use. It's
Mhm.
it's free. Like go, here you go, and but best of luck,
Yeah.
cuz if you're not giving me like a white to something,
They're like, "Can you go
it
white
brings
to
me
E-Crew?" You're like, "No."
exactly. Yeah, even
You're
give me like
boring.
white to dove gray.
Yeah.
Fine, but it
Sure.
just needs to be something,
Yeah. There has to be it has to
Otherwise like
go somewhere.
somewhere. There has to be a story happening here. Otherwise, like it doesn't run the good chemicals. And then I'm just like, I might as well be hemming pants.
I love that you're leaning into the only the parts of it that bring you joy. And like you said, you're only doing it because it's fun. And if you didn't like doing it, you could easily just be like, "Oh, I'm good. I got a day job." Like,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I also think that like probably people only come to me for commissions because of what I do. Like
mhm,
it's very rare that I will be asked to make something that doesn't have a gradient in it.
mhm,
Because otherwise there are so many other very talented creatives
yeah,
who can do what they want. Like if they're
right.
coming to me, it's for a rainbow, let's be
Yeah.
honest.
I mean, and that's great. It's like you're synonymous with that. And so people know where to go, or people know where to send their friends who are looking for what you do. It's like if somebody was like, I want a gradient, quilted coat, I'd be like, I have the greatest person for you. Like I wouldn't necessarily take that on if I already know that that exists somewhere in the world. Then like you do it better than I could do it because then I would have to sit there and I have to procure the fabrics and I'd have to figure out the gradient. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like I think that's our greatest strength as like a community as well of like knowing people who know how to do the things that maybe you get requests for or like somebody's looking for that. It's like I love having such a large catalog I can pull from of people who I'm like, I know exactly who can help you. Because not only is that great customer service, like that person is going to then remember your kindness, and maybe somewhere down the road you can help them in a different way. And
Love that.
not that it's like I'm only helping people because I might get something out of them, but I just think like what goes around comes around. Like if you're gonna pretend like your um work is proprietary, if you're making someone else's pattern for someone, like they're just paying you to do the work, like what I do isn't proprietary. Like anybody could do what I do. But the fact that like I pride myself on my customer service and making sure that everything I do is top notch, like, and has that person's personality in it as well as mine. Like, let me help you with this. If people like my vision, then that works. But I think, yeah, when people get too snooty and too precious with what they do, it's like, you're not helping anybody. You're not building up the community. And so I love that you're willing to just be like, here, I can help you, but I'm not going to make that thing for you. Or,
I mean, I feel the exact same way. What I do is not special. Anyone can do what I do. I just like I love it and I'm so happy to do it and try to do it to the very best of my capability in terms of quality and time in and special, attention paid to who it's for and like
mhm,
that's that's the very best that we can offer, I think, as makers.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. And then it's beautiful to see what comes out of that, because I think that always leads to something bigger and something more special, that does become special because like you are paying attention to, like, anybody can do it, sure, anybody can make a gradient, but like the attention to details and the pieces that you pull into it that make it unique for you, like, getting to know your clients so that you can put special nods to their life and into their piece. Like not everybody's going to do that, not everybody's going to take the time to hunt down those crazy little bits of fabric that, have a frog or have a mushroom or it's like whatever the thing is. And
Exactly,
you're,
whatever the thing is.
yeah, like some people wouldn't take the time. And so I think that's really cool, like leaning into who you are and what is meaningful to you, and also sharing that with people and letting them feel seen and heard through that also is like, I mean, we all just want to be seen, right? We all just want to feel seen and heard. And so whatever way you can do that is just, it helps the world as a whole. I'm just convinced. Like,
I completely agree. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, any goodness that you can put into the world is it helps absolutely everyone. It shines a light
yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, Not quilting related, but who's like your favorite artist right now? Whose art are you trying to gobble up and put in your gallery? I want to know because I want to go find them and look at their stuff.
Okay. There's an artist. I was just in Michigan
Mm,
like yesterday at the Broad Museum, which is part of the Michigan State University Art Museum. They have this amazing inaugural exhibit where they bring on an artist each year to do a huge installation in this gorgeous, gorgeous big new space.
mhm,
And the artist's name is Esma Mamud. She's only 31, which for a conceptual artist is like very, very, very young to be getting museum exhibitions.
mhm,
And she works in the conceptual sphere. So all of her pieces, whether it's photography or sculpture or drawing or whatever, all have just like a backstory and idea behind them.
mhm,
And she was inspired by the Kehinde Wiley residency, artist residency, where she's of Egyptian descent. So like I think born and raised in Ontario in Canada, and she was over in Africa, I think maybe in Senegal, and she discovered that shea butter, which
mm,
is in all of our beauty products everywhere,
yeah.
is harvested by young Black girls in Africa, paid nothing, to then be shipped over to North America, where it's bleached and processed and marketed to white women.
Mhm,
And And as a young girl of color, as a minority in the town she grew up in, she didn't see herself in any of the beauty standards of her childhood,
Yeah.
which was our childhood, like the millennial childhood.
Mhm.
And absolutely true. And so what she's done is she has taken um, a couple young Black girls that she knows who are daughters of friends, dancers. They're 6, 7, 8 years old, and taken them into this booth that takes a photo in 360 degrees all at once and
Mm.
turns it into this 3D printed sculpture. And from there, she's done a reverse mold and uses shea butter mixed with a beeswax and a resin to help it harden. And she's created these beautiful busts of these young girls out of shea butter, out of this thing that this product, which is very connected to the Black culture in North America. Like her memories of growing up in her house was like every Sunday is shea butter time. They're
Mhm.
covering their hair and their skin, and it's so potent and so delicious, but it's been taken over by this beauty monster.
Mhm.
And so she created these beautiful busts of these young girls, stunning in these amazing protective hairstyles, and they sit on these marble plinths, and they look like the marble busts that you see in the Met.
Yeah.
Like they are these beautiful sort of historical feeling marble pieces, but made out of shea butter. And then so for this exhibition, she took it one step further,
Mhm.
and she managed to produce an entire full scale little girl, braids to sneakers, the whole
Wow.
thing, out of shea butter. And this time she's mixed in a charcoal dust. So the
Mhm.
sculpture is black.
Oh my gosh.
Just beautiful with her little overalls and her little Air Jordans, and you could die. Like she's just the most perfect, beautiful little girl with these stunning gold earrings in the
Mm.
sculpture. And she's looking up at this fence. And this is a memory taken from her own childhood in London, Ontario, in the schoolyard, because London, Ontario is on the migratory pathway for butterflies, for
Mm.
monarch butterflies. And so in the Broad Museum right now is this little girl, 4 feet high, looking up at this 18-foot fence it's like white powder coated steel, but with ivy and with all of the foliage that you expect to see in Southern Ontario. And across from this fence, over the other side, suspended from the ceiling, are almost 6,000, 5,999 Black steel monarchs.
Wow.
It's breathtaking. And the show is called Complex Dreams. And the way that she's standing with her hands like a dancer, sort of
Mhm.
upright, with her hands placed on her hips, mimicking the shape of a butterfly's wings,
Okay.
sort of leaning forward, looking through this white fence
Mhm.
at these Black butterflies in the sky. And there's so much there about aspiration and hard work and dreaming, like just dreaming of this freedom,
Mhm.
and in whatever way that is in the mind of a young
Yeah.
girl of color. And and before I was leaving on this road trip to go see this show, I was telling my daughter Matilda about the little girl and the butterflies, and she quietly, just like quietly to herself in the car, because I was dropping her off at school, goes, I wish I was a butterfly. And I was like, that's about it. That is
Mhm.
about, for I think, for any of us. And that's why I love this artist's work so much, because even though the stories she's telling are so personal to her life, I think those metaphors resonate for all of us across the board, because
Yeah.
every single one of us has been blocked by something, and
Mhm.
every single one of us has aspirations of being something greater, higher, bigger, more magical, more whatever the case may be. And she is just a shining light in the art world right now. Um yeah, I haven't stopped thinking about that show. And also she did the lighting in sort of this sort of dream space. So even though the sculptures are black and white, the room is pink and purple and blue. Like you're just in this haze. And
Oh.
it's it's so surreal. and it's so magical. And of course, my little gradient heart was like, oh,
Yeah.
fabulous. She just she nailed it head to toe. It was
Wow.
really, really special. But yes, it's called Complex Dreams, and it's on at the Broad in Michigan until February. So
Okay.
for anyone who's in the area,
Go look at it.
strongly recommend. Strongly, strongly.
Okay. That's incredible. Wow. That's
Ooh,
like,
yeah,
woo.
I love
Yeah.
it.
I'm
I
like,
get very very passionate
yeah.
about her work for
Yeah.
sure.
No, that's so great. And thank you for sharing that. Cause yeah, I think I get so sucked into quilting. I'm like, oh yeah, I forget there's other things out there and other, other inspiration. It's like not just fabric, but there's so many things out there that other people are doing that can be interpreted in different ways and could inspire you to make something different or try something new or whatever that is. And so I appreciate that. And yeah, well, I'll have to get that information from you so I can put her in
For
the
sure.
show notes.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you work, can you listen to a podcast or watch TV or anything, or do you focus in?
Oh no, I listen to things. Like I have to because it's just so noisy. I try to have headphones in because with the machine running and if I'm sewing and it's just it gets like really irritating the sound of the machine. Sometimes I want to light it on fire because like my little sensory ADHD kicks in and I'm like, I can't hear that sound for one more second.
I
So
totally, I hear you. I'm with you.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. So yeah, I definitely have headphones in. How about you? Oh, you said you listen to audiobooks
Constant.
and
Oh my
yeah,
podcasts. Hello.
podcasts. Yeah,
You keep me
definitely.
going.
Oh, yay. That's exciting. Uh, I just love this. I'm so excited. I want to go back a little bit because the question popped in my head while you were talking about it, and then I forgot, and now it came back. So I want to go back to because you were talking about how you just like you have always organized things by color, and then you said you were the oldest of four. I'm also the oldest of four. So I'm
Hey.
wondering if that like color organization is something that speaks to your role in your family with your siblings, or if there is just nothing more behind it beyond that's just what tickles your brain.
First daughter syndrome. What can I say? Um, I no, I think I'm a bossy pants for sure. Uh, for sure. I think that I don't know if that was how it manifested in particular, because I don't necessarily like, weirdly, my books are not color coded on the
Oh,
shelf.
okay. Okay.
Um, they might have been, but I think I read too many series and I feel
Mm,
more obligated to keep a series together than to move that around. Um,
yeah.
but certainly in my family, uh I was definitely the boss, and my parents usually relied on me to sort of put me in charge of wrangling, whether we're on trips or whatever. It's, like, I was in charge of getting them up and getting them dressed and getting them out, and it was very like camp counselor
Mm,
energy. And and uh and then that kind of like manifested out of it. I don't know, maybe it was just that was my space to feel total and complete control
hmm
in a, big, busy house. I'm also a child of divorce. I
mm,
don't know, my parents divorced so young that I have no memory of them together. Like, my stepmom has been my mom in living memory, and
mm,
my mother and my stepmother have always like worked together very efficiently to raise me, and I had a like a totally split 50-50
mm,
custody childhood in like very close neighborhoods, same school, same friend circle. Um, so I wouldn't have blamed that, but like maybe my love of organizing color came out of trying to just have complete control over one element of my life in my childhood. That would be like my psychoanalysis if I was going to go deep on that,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting because I'm not typically a very organized person, but yeah, if I'm like I am particular in certain things, and it's like it's that sense of control. But I also like, what's the age gap? Because like I've got a really big one between me and the youngest, but
Yeah, well, there's 11 years between
okay.
myself and my baby sister, which is like now she just turned 25 and she's lived with us for 3 years, and like she has the energy in her early 20s to be a nanny, which like I absolutely do not.
Yeah.
I am such a tired mom, and she's a nonstop. Like I really think she's found her calling, but like I was more of a parent to her than a sister.
Hmm.
And even now living together, uh like this is the longest we've lived together because the age gap was so big that by the time she was a sentient human, I was already in university.
Yeah.
So being able to get to know each other as grown-ups, I think is really, really nice.
Mhm.
um but it's a fairly big age gaps. Like I'm now about to be 36, and then my next brother down is 32, and then 28, and then 25.
Okay.
So there's a fairly large spread, but
Yeah.
we're extremely close.
Yeah.
Like very close. They're my best friends for
Yeah.
sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, mine's 15 years. So
Big one,
mm,
big jump.
yeah, and it's yeah, me, I'm I'm 38, and then my one brother's 37, so we're like 13 months apart. And then there's a big gap, and I was 10 when my next brother was born, so he's just turned 28. And then my sister is 23. So,
Yeah, so
yeah.
we're mommies.
Yeah.
We're mommies, right, to them.
Yeah.
It's a funny time. Yeah, watching them all grow up. I
Yeah.
think that there's some karma in it for me because my I actually don't really like children. And it just there. I love my own children. I would kill for them, I would die for them. But
Yeah.
like I don't like children in general. I don't really understand the games. Why are they sticky? I don't have an imagination. Like, can I sit here and read books? Would you like to organize a puzzle by Rainbow Gradient? If not, then I'm kind of like out of the loop here with you. Um, and when my sister was born, I was like, you got to be kidding me with this. It was the age of what I call being voluntold.
Mm.
It's where when your mom goes, "Oh, Taiga will read you a book," and I go like,
No,
"I'm
I won't.
16. I'm an asshole. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm going out with my friends. Like, don't talk to me." It's like that kind of thing where I was just like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
I'd rather do anything else." And so now that I have a 3-year-old who like absolutely worships but also bullies my sister, I'm kind of going like, all those years that I had to put up with like a little kid just climbing on me in the morning when I'm like having my 17-year-old piece of crap sleep in, like,
Mhm.
I'm watching my own daughter get back at her for me.
Yeah.
And I know that because of the age gap, by the time my sister has children, if she has children, my firstborn will be able to babysit and she'll take the brunt of all of my sister's children's garbage. And so, we'll all just feel better about it.
Yeah.
And the cycle will continue.
Yeah. Right. I know. I'm like watching my closest brother, he has three kids, and just like watching them, like I'm like, oh, you get what you deserve, buddy. Like, no, his kids are great. I love them, but they give him so much crap. And like, he's like, oh, if they would just, I'm like, oh, nothing like the pot calling the kettle black. Oh, weird. It's like almost like you're staring in a mirror. No.
We're such big sisters. I love it. I love it. I feel like I told you so is just like tattooed on our
Yeah. Like
brains. We
right
can't help
here.
ourselves. Yeah.
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 Anyway, it's just, anytime I come across another like oldest sister, elder millennial, I'm like, this is a vibe.
I see you. I
Yeah.
feel you.
Yeah. Yeah. We're soul sisters now.
Exactly, exactly. My best friend calls that moment of silence. He's a lawyer
Hmm.
partner in his law firm, and he'll go home and be like, "It's defragmentation time," and it's just like sitting in silence,
Hmm.
probably with his dog, just like coming back together as a human being before he can go off to evening programming.
Yeah.
Rough time. I could not be a teacher. I do not know how you do it. How you could have ever done it. Like
Well, I was like, I don't anymore because I couldn't do it either. I hit a
Ah.
wall. I hit a wall and there's like a million factors that go into it, but I just feel like ultimately like my life is too short to not do things that bring me joy. And exactly, quilting and making things for people and long arming and owning my own business, running my own life has really
Absolutely.
sparked a piece of me that like I didn't really know existed before. And us having a supportive husband and all that and like him changing careers 50,000 times like gave me permission to do whatever I want because he does whatever he wants, not in like a snotty way, but he's gone from being, you know, working in actuary, like being an actuarial analyst and having a mathematics degree to now he's finishing his master's in counseling and he's going to be a therapist. And it's like
Oh.
a whole range of things. So anyway, yeah, it's fun to like just like learn about people's pipeline to like how they got to where they are and like what what about your personality and your childhood led you to this because we all have things, right? And
What's your trauma? Tell me about your trauma.
we can stick with the little T if you don't want to talk about the big T, but exactly. No, that's so great. Well,
Oh, I love it. I love it.
oh, I thank you again so much for being here today and talking about all of this with me. Your gradients are so inspirational to me and give me hope that color is not going to die anytime soon. And
Color forever.
yeah, and just the quilt coat thing is I made my first one out of an old quilt top
You
that
did?
yeah,
Where is it? Is it next to you? Show me.
it's not next to me. I don't know where it is at the moment.
Quilts are so great. There are quilts all over my house,
Yeah.
but the quilt coat is like wear it out into the world. It's still your blanket. It's just as soft. It's just as washable. You can hide underneath it. It's a pillow. You can play on it like a picnic blanket. You can have it at the airport. Like it does all the things. It's like if you ever read the Lorax,
Mm-hmm.
the Thneed,
Mm-hmm.
which is the thing that they made that's super soft that does all the jobs. Quilt coats are the Thneed. Okay? They
Yeah.
they do it all. And it's like it's so nice to be able to create these things that it's not just a reflection of the client that lives like in their home on their bed to see these women and hopefully one day men
Mm-hmm.
put these things on their bodies that is such a reflection of them and their personality and what they have asked for and what colors they feel amazing in and what fabrics they love. And I just send them off into the world.
Yeah.
What better feeling than that? And now I've sent coats to Japan, to Norway, to Paris, like
Wow.
all over. And I just think about them like just feeling great with
Yeah.
their happy little coats getting softer and softer all over the world. I love it. It makes me so happy.
Yeah. It's honestly, so I won this vintage quilt top from the quilt show that my local guild puts on every year. And so it's 25 bucks. It was all stained. There were some holes I had to fix, but I got some muslin and I quilted it really densely on my long arm. And then my mom and I had saved this old pattern that we had used to make robes. Like she had made me and my grandma matching robes one Christmas. And so we just cut it out of felt, like a large out of felt, so we could keep the pieces, but we were like, we're not going to make these as robes. Like, so we use that to make a couple of different prototypes of jackets, and it doesn't have a collar. So that's the only thing I don't love about it. But let me see. I think I here it is. It's in a reel, so you'll have to excuse me. Like, but there's
Yes. Very. Oh, I see what you did there with the. Oh, look at the
there's a
back.
yeah, so I centered the back on the center of the quilt, and then you can't really see the quilting, but it was so stained and I couldn't get the stains out that I flipped the sleeves inside out. So the quilting is still on the inside, but it was those parts were so nasty. And then when I rolled the sleeves, you could still see some of
You
the
get the
quilting.
cup.
And then I found little spots for the pockets. That was before I put the pockets on, but I found little spots that weren't stained to make pockets. And so the pockets are from the outside of the quilt. And then so just the sleeves and the front panels are flipped inside out. So anyway, but yeah,
Really awesome.
I want to I want to figure out something else because I think I want I want a collar and I want it to be more like fitted because it was really gappy. Anywho,
Tamarack.
okay.
They
Okay.
have a quilt, like the you can buy the basic that has
Yeah.
no collar, and then you just get the collar or hood attachment,
Okay.
and it comes right at the shoulder, and you can tighten it up in the body. Unlike the Ilford, which I use a lot because it has the drop shoulder, so it's very like um flexible depending on what size you are. You can, like I can wear it or my sister can wear it, and like I'm an 8 and she's a 0. So it's,
Right.
it's very gentle, but the Tamarack has the much cleaner fit, and you can
Okay.
add that collar, like extend it a little bit.
Okay.
I was asked to do a quilt coat class in the
Oh,
spring
yeah.
in Nova Scotia. And I'm like, I'm crazy excited and nervous for it, but like, come. Come
Yeah, we'll put that information
out
in there
and do
too.
this with me. I'm so afraid. I think it'll be great.
That's going to be amazing. In the spring, you said?
Yeah. And the person who's putting it on, she owns a quilt shop out there, and they have this barn that's usually used for weddings that now she's using for these tutorials. And I'm like,
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that's exciting. We'll put that information in the show notes too, because I'm sure people will want to sign up and
whew,
that's exciting.
Lord,
Oh my gosh. Have you ever taught before?
no, never.
Oh my gosh.
Never. So I'm going to spend the next 6 months like working through the steps, and what am I going to need to tell everyone to bring, and like school supplies. Oh my God, what firstborn daughter doesn't love school supplies?
Oh my
Woo!
gosh. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's fun. Well, that'll be so good. And yeah, I think it can be intimidating to make garments, but I think the the pieces of a jacket are pretty simple, and especially if you want it a little roomier, like there's room to work with it. I think just making it finished and polished is where it can be a little bit tricky. And admittedly, mine is not like I just pressed the seams open and then I stitched down the seam allowance on the inside. And so it looks pretty good and finished on the outside, but the inside is not finished. So anyway,
Did you like serge the edges, or you just cut and stuff? That's fine.
yeah,
Eh.
yeah. I mean, and it's like it's an older quilt with older fabrics and quilted it densely. It's not really unraveling. Like I've washed it multiple times because just like you said, the more you wear it, the more you wash it and like live in it and love it, the more comfortable it gets. And I wore it to QuiltCon because I had finished it in time to wear it to QuiltCon, and I wore it on the airplane with just a hoodie underneath it. And I was so cozy. Normally I freeze on airplanes. I was so cozy and comfortable the whole time. I was like, oh, this was the best thing I've ever done with my life.
Are you going to go back to QuiltCon this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be at
Where is it
Phoenix.
now? Arizona or
It's in
something? Where's
Phoenix. Yeah. Yeah.
this might be my year. This might be it.
I think you should do it. It'll be so fun. It'll be warm too.
Right. Too warm for quilt coats.
Oh, it still gets in like the 50s and 60s there, but it's not like
Okay.
freezing. It's not like snow and ice, which is why
Yeah.
they try to have it in the southern bits of the United States when they host it because it's always in February. And as
Yeah,
us,
right. A couple years ago, weren't a whole bunch of people snowed out and couldn't, like, flights were canceled and they couldn't come in because it just like whatever state they were in was
yeah,
absolutely iced over.
yeah, it was
Mm.
it was not last year, but the year before. And it was in February. I like my dad's father had passed away and we were having his funeral and like his family couldn't come because they're in Seattle and Portland and their airports were shut down because of all the ice and snow. And even though it was fine here, they couldn't get out because of all the rain and ice storms that they had had. So it was bad, but yeah,
Very lucky to have living grandparents into our late 30s for
yeah,
us.
yeah,
Feel that too.
yeah. It does feel lucky because it's like I know so many people my age that don't have grandparents because they've already passed away. And that is the benefit of having a young family. I think we just all like I get to experience my aunts and uncles. I get to experience my great aunts and uncles. And my grandparents and my great grandparents and just so many generations of our family. And
Oh, for sure. I mean, I completely agree with you. And again, like, I grew up with great grandparents and all of my grandparents
mhm,
and again, like with divorces and remarriages, like I had 12 grandparents growing up. So I got the full gamut of slumber parties and all kinds of like wonderful things. And even though I am so happy that I am with my husband and we had kids when we had kids and we had kids as soon as we could have kids, like it
mhm,
really, we got married and like time for babies. But
yeah,
I do wish that we had met, 10 years earlier and could have had a younger family, and just so that like we, when they're grow up will be young enough that like if they're having kids, if our kids are having kids at a reasonable age, I'll still be able to like be a cool young grandmother.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
you'll still be that. I mean, I think it's a mindset too. I think my my mom's parents were definitely a different breed of grandparent than my dad's parents, and like they stayed very like active in our lives and still are. I mean, I think too, like, and I almost wonder, like, do you think though that like you would have been in the headspace to raise your kids how you want to 10 years ago?
Oh God, no.
Yeah, okay.
God, no. No, I would have been batshit crazy. No, no. I mean, I really do believe that everything happens the way that it needs to happen.
Yeah,
And, if I had had kids 10 years ago, I would have had them with my ex-husband and I would have made him miserable and he would have made me miserable. And like now he gets to be delightfully happy and in love in his perfect scenario. And I get to be happy and love in my perfect scenario. And like,
yeah,
instead, we had kids in our 30s instead of our 20s. And like,
yeah,
you know, if for whatever deity is out there, quilt god,
yeah.
they're like looking out for us in that regard. And I saw on I think it was either Instagram or TikTok in one of my like midnight insomnia doom scrolls that it was someone talking about their dog.
Mhm,
Stop me if you've heard this. And how, like they love to like feed the dog like a little bit of chicken, a little bit of cheese, and like sometimes it's they're eating chocolate.
mhm.
And which, for anyone who's never met a dog before who's listening, dogs can't eat chocolate. I don't know if you know this. If you don't know this, I'm not sure where you've been, but you know, and
Yeah.
and so like the owner's eating chocolate and the dog is doing like the dog-eyed thing with the little ears, and they're so
Mhm,
sad and they want it so badly. And it's the like, what if I lift a paw? What if I lift my other paw? What if I sit? What if I roll? What if I dance? Like, please, please, please. And finally the dog relents and they sulk off into the corner and they're so sad with their tail between their legs because all
mm,
they wanted was this chocolate, and they must be such a bad boy not to
mhm,
get this chocolate. And this owner is saying, like, dog, don't you understand that, like, I love you so much? And if you only knew that this would hurt you,
mhm.
but you don't, because you're a dumb dog and you don't understand.
Yeah,
And that I'm doing this because I love you. And if
mhm,
you think about that as a metaphor for the universe, and that sometimes we can want something to work out so badly, or we can want something to happen so badly and it doesn't,
mhm.
that there is, and I would love to believe that this is true. So I choose to believe that it's true.
Yeah,
That there's a possibility that the universe is saying, like, dear sweet thing, you do not understand that what
mhm.
you want is going to hurt you.
Yeah,
And your time is coming, and it'll be much better
yeah,
than this thing that's going to kill you if you eat it.
right.
So, and I just like, I like to think that way in life, that,
Mhm.
like this little like weird business that came out of nowhere in my brain
Yeah,
was like, if I as a little girl had been told that this is where I would end up, I would have been ecstatic with joy, but like I had to go through whatever I had to go through in all of the years of my young adulthood to get here and manifest this.
yeah,
And same goes for my marriage, and same goes for my children. And I think I would have been, if I had married Simon, my husband, 10 years earlier, I probably would have been a really shitty wife because
mm,
I had to come through what I had to come through to make it to here. And I probably would have been a really shitty mom. All the same reasons. Like I needed to take that time and grow And because of that, I get to be this person to them. And
Yeah.
I like this person much more, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
than any previous iteration of who I was.
Yeah.
So while I, in a sort of objective way, I would have loved to have a young family and be a young mom. I no regrets.
Yeah.
I think it all worked out.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I think it's so funny, like the hindsight thing, because it's like, in high school, and you're like, I'm gonna be like this by this age, and I'm gonna have these things by this age. And like I, I was like, I'm gonna be a young mom too. I want to have kids, be married, all this stuff. I want like by 22, I need to be married and be start having kids. And like at 22 is when I met my husband. We got married when I was 26. And
How
we
old were his sons then?
um when we first met, they were um Antonio was 6, almost 7, and Parker was 4.
Wow.
Yeah, 4. No, he was,
I mean, that's awesome. Like you're
and
on
he
the
was
scene
little.
for all the cool stuff. Like all
Yeah.
the you skip diapers and then you're right in it for the play. It's really cool.
Yeah.
That's
But
really,
even
really fun.
Yeah. But even then, it's like I still had so much growing to do. And like I thought I knew all these things about being a good parent or being a kid. And like, but really having to take cues from my husband too, because they're his kids. They're not like they're mine. I call them my kids and my sons, whatever. We've been around for a long time. But but they're his, and their moms are involved, and like they have to, like the dynamic has to be different. Like I can't just like take over, because that's not my role. But then also having to take a back seat and take a hard look at like why I was reacting or why I was like expecting certain things, and how that was impacting them and impacting, you know, my relationship ultimately. Like it's just so like parenting brings out just like such a different aspect of
The monster in you. Yes. I
yeah,
mean, that is still the case now
yeah,
for me in my
sure.
very, like happy marriage. Just children really trigger you and their reactions. And the fact that you are partnering with another like fully formed three-dimensional human who has their own experiences and expectations,
Yeah.
trying to find a commonality there.
Hmm.
And like, unless one of you is going to be completely dominant and the other totally subservient in the act of parenting, there's gonna be friction and
Hmm.
challenges and expectations for sure. And I mean, like, it's funny. I, for the first time last week, dropped our firstborn off at kindergarten, which I
Hmm.
think is called pre-K in where you guys are. In Canada, it's JK, it's junior kindergarten. So I don't know
Okay.
what
Yeah.
the
Pre-K. Yeah.
okay. And I dropped her off at the school that I went to. And
Oh.
someone who was my teacher in middle school is now the principal. And like it was a very weird moment. And I called up a childhood friend who like, I had known when we were like 10, 11, 12 years old. And when we were that old, we were like, one day we're going to get married and we're going to in like when we're so old, when we're 20, we're going to get married and we're going to have kids at 24, just like our parents when we're grown-ups.
Hmm.
And now at 36 being like, bro, guess what I just did? And he's going like, what? No, like we're still children. Like who gave us a driver's license? Like why is anyone trusting us to do anything? It's just the millennial mindset is like really weird.
It is
We're
super
all still
weird.
just kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like that one foot in your childhood and one foot in like, I'm independent and I do what I want. Like, I'm going to set boundaries and whatever.
Yes.
That's
Healthy
funny.
boundaries. And yet
Mm.
we remember when we were advertised milk very aggressively.
Yeah.
So aggressively.
The most aggressive campaign to ever exist was that Got Milk one.
Really, really intense. Like we really needed to drink milk so badly. I don't know what was going on in like the cow industry during that decade, but yeah,
Oh my God.
it was a wild ride.
Yeah. And I'm allergic to dairy. So I was like, felt so left out. I couldn't even drink milk. And all my friends were like, oh, I need to get they would like get the magazines and like rip the celebrity ads out. And like, cause of course, like Jonathan Taylor Thomas and like Devin
Yes.
Sawa and like all the 90s heartthrobs were like in these magazines. And I was like, I'm allergic.
Also, like your life as an adult with lactose intolerance has to be much better than your childhood with
Oh my
lactose
God.
intolerance because
Yeah.
there were not a lot of options when we were kids, but
Yeah.
now like oat milk latte is where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
There are
like,
like 70 different types of dairy substitute.
yeah. Yeah. And that's like, I am like, I say pescatarian because sometimes I will still eat some like fatty fish. And, but mostly I do just plant-based because I'm also allergic to eggs, which is dumb.
That's
But
rough.
yeah, so but yeah, like the world of being like a vegan or a plant-based eater, or even just like if you want to reduce your animal product intake, like there's just so much more available. And it's crazy because there's so much more available and there's like such an industry for it and people are wanting it. But then there's still people who are like, how do you get your protein? How do you, and I'm like, read a book, why don't you? Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I don't know if you know this, but like the largest land mammals only eat vegetation. They don't eat like meat. They don't eat other animals. You tell me how they get their protein, please. Tell the
So funny.
cow that they're deficient in nutrients. Like, are you kidding me? Anyway,
I mean,
it's
like I do love, I happen to love cheese. Next to
mm,
gradients, cheese is really like a top five favorite thing. Um and but I do think that actually just drinking glasses of milk is quite gross as a concept. I mean, unless you have like a mouthful of peanut butter, there should be no reason.
sure.
And when I was pregnant, my very wonderful and loving mother-in-law would remind me to drink milk for calcium, and I was so revolted, but also really happy to be able to promise her that I was eating a lot of broccoli, which is higher in calcium than milk and
Hmm.
has nothing to do whatsoever with drinking giant glasses of milk, which I would yeah, I would get on my knees and pray to not have to do that
Yeah.
often. The I mean, I think the joke for me is that my first husband was very lactose intolerant,
Mm.
which I always found to be such a drag because I love cheese so much. And also, as a fairly useless cook, didn't actually know how to make anything that didn't have dairy in it.
Oh.
And now that I'm with my now husband, who is an exceptional cook,
Mm.
and I was so, and eats everything, and it's a great time, our daughter is lactose intolerant.
Ah,
And I'm like, well, now you know what? It was gonna get me one way or another, and I'm an oat milk latte enthusiast now.
there you go. Yeah.
That's it. And
Yeah.
also, she won't steal my brie, and that's a great time.
You're like, sorry, it's mine.
Not
This
for
is
you,
yours. Yeah. And thankfully the cheese
because it's not
substitutes.
special.
Yeah. Thankfully the cheese substitutes have gotten better. Like I just remember my mom buying like the only cheese substitute that was available in the stores at the time as a kid. And like it was made with almond milk and
Oh,
it was just
it
hard as
was
a
not
rock.
good.
It was
It
so
did not
bad.
melt. It was not
No.
good. Yeah, no, I remember all of that stuff. I
Yeah.
remember it all. Ugh,
It was
I'm so
so
sorry.
bad. Yeah, it was really bad. And so I would just eat it every once in a while because like, I mean, I don't go into anaphylaxis or anything, but I definitely like I get eczema everywhere and like I get
My daughter
it's
too. What a bummer. It
yeah.
sucks.
Yeah,
It
it's
sucks.
bad. So anyway, well, it's good to know you love cheese because, you know,
Just in case anyone listening wants to just send me weird packages in the mail of world's best cheeses, I will accept payment for coats in cheese. No,
valuable cheese. You're like, it has to
maybe.
be good cheese.
Good cheese. Good
Yeah.
cheese. You ever heard of gray owl? That's great. Anyone listening will accept gray owl for quilts.
Oh,
Um, yeah.
wow.
Anyway, what a weird turn this took.
I know, right? Well, then maybe we should wrap it up because we're in the
Okay,
cheese
well,
land,
great. Here we go.
but I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and letting me and my listeners get to know you more. And I just appreciate the time. And yeah, this has been great.
Well, it was such a pleasure. I loved it. And I hope to be able to just like run into you at QuiltCon and attack you, like drag you down to the floor and smother you in hugs. It'll be
Yes,
a great time.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I'll be on the lookout. Like, has anybody seen TikTok?
Where is
Like
she?
I'll wear knee
I'm getting
pads just in case.
tackled.
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah. Yay. Oh man.
Yay.
I'm excited. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you in actual person and getting smothered in hugs. And in the meantime, I will just keep a watch on everything you're doing because I'm obsessed. And yes, thank you for sharing your gradients with the world because I think it's so inspiring.
Thank you so much. And thank you
Yeah.
for sharing your podcast. It really it keeps me good company, and it's so nice to get to know our community better through what you're doing. So I really
Good.
appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being a fan and now a
Oh,
participant.
no, thank you. No,
Yeah.
thank you. No, thank you. You
Yeah,
hang up.
sure.
No, you hang
Yeah,
up.
I know. I know. That's how it feels sometimes. I'm like, anywho, we'll talk to you later.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna go now.